you very much, everyone, for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm going to talk about some research that I've had an opportunity to do since I've returned back to Guelph. And yeah, it's been recently published, so this is good news. This is good. Oh my God, sorry. Let me do this here. There we go. Okay, that one. Yeah, I'm a Mac person too. So first of all, I would just like to acknowledge my co-authors on this work. It's been a privilege to work with them, and then also to just the funders and groups that we've been able to work with to do some of this work, because this work would not occur without them. There we go. So just to start off with, I wanted to just mention, sure none of you need a reminder about, is that the improving the lives of animals and agricultural systems has historically mostly focused on minimizing negative experiences that these animals are potentially exposed to. However, there has been an increase in over the last several years with respect to the promotion of positive experiences for animals, like pleasure, enjoyment, play, choice, happiness. However, I wanted to focus on how veterinarians and veterinary students perceive the role of a veterinarian and what their thoughts are about positive welfare opportunities for dairy cows specifically. So that is what we decided to do. That was our objectives, to be able to characterize what they felt the role was, but then also specifically their attitudes, the veterinary professional values, and the perceived ability of veterinarians to influence positive welfare opportunities for dairy cows. And we did this by distributing a survey to members of the Canadian Association of Bovine Veterinarians and all veterinary students that were enrolled at Canadian institutions. It was a cloud-based survey on Qualtrics. It was available in both English and French. It took about 10 minutes to complete, and it was available for a 12-week period of time. Our outcome variables, we had two different outcome variables, or types of outcome variables. One was just standalone questions, where we would ask a specific question and they would answer that, and we analyze that. And a second was a series of very similarly worded questions that we were then able to collapse down into a construct to give us a better understanding of how participants interpreted certain aspects of welfare. And then we asked some demographic questions as well to be able to characterize our population a little bit better. And you can see here just a couple of the questions that we had in the survey, just to give you an idea of what it looked like. I then utilized linear regression models and SAS to be able to analyze the data. And if people want to ask me questions about that later on, that's fine. We can get into more details. And we also asked the demographic variables around geographic region, gender identity, the role that the participant undertook, like a veterinary student, a practicing veterinarian with less than half of their practice occupying dairy cows, or primarily a dairy cow practice, and then whether or not they had graduate training, and the years of veterinary practice experience. I also get a dry mouth. There we go. We had nearly 400 total responses, and from that, we were able to include 226 surveys. I just want to highlight a couple of the demographic characterize our sample with just a couple of these demographic questions. That most of our respondents were from Ontario and the Western provinces. That most of them were veterinary students, and most of them identified as women. So what did we find? So the first question that we asked them was, what is the role of a veterinarian? And you can see on, I don't have a pointer, that's okay. You can see on the far right what we asked them about the types of welfare impacts. Is the main role to decrease negatives to dairy cows? Is it to provide dairy cows with a balance of negative and positive experiences, or is it to increase positive experiences for dairy cows? And you can see on the the vertical axis, the level of importance with 1 being low level, 7 being a high level of importance. And the bottom, you can see, I do have it broken down by region, but let's just focus on the overall result here. And you can see at the top, to decrease negative experiences for dairy cows was seen as the most important role of a veterinarian by our participants. The next one down, which was significantly less, but still ranked very high, was to provide balanced experiences for dairy cows, and the least, but still ranked quite high. Oh, thank you. But it doesn't matter. We tried. Was the least, but still ranked very high. So I guess the take home from this is that while all very high, they were focused that the role of the veterinarian was primarily to decrease negative experiences for the dairy cows. The next question we asked was around was the promotion of positive experiences. How did that rate compared to minimizing negative experiences? And you can see on the right-hand side again, the legend where the darker tan rates as far less important, and kind of all the way up to the darker aqua bluish color, which is just as important as that promoting positives was just as important as minimizing negatives. And you can see that at the very bottom, this is the level of the number or the percentage of respondents in each of those categories. And I have it broken down by those 3 roles that we talked about, and also broken down by gender identity. And you can see that for the veterinary students and for veterinarians with a practice that has less than 50% dairy cows, that those that identified as women believe that the promotion of positive experiences was not more important, but had a higher level of importance as compared to those that did not identify as women. However, one of the neat things that we found was that in veterinary practices over 50% dairy cows, there was no difference between the gender identities, which is not something that's typically found in the literature. So this is something that's going to need a little bit further explanation or research in. Moving on here to what our participants, what their attitude was towards providing positive welfare. If we want to look at the horizontal axis, one is having unfavorable views towards positive welfare, 7 very favorable views towards positive welfare, and then this on the vertical axis is just the number of participants. And you can see that the mean, which is the dash line there, is 6.3, which is our participants' very favorable views towards providing positive welfare opportunities to dairy cows. And the next one that we asked about was what they thought the veterinary profession thought of providing positive welfare opportunities to dairy cows. And again, it's the same sort of a graph here. And it was a little less than what their personal views were, just below 6 with the dashed line. And then lastly, we asked them around the behavioral control that they had to make those changes around providing positive welfare opportunities to dairy cows. And with our first one here, veterinarians were quite confident that they could suggest positive welfare opportunities for dairy cows. However, they were less confident, kind of fell right in the middle, whether veterinarians controlled the decision to be able to suggest those welfare opportunities to farmers. And they were not confident at all that the implementation of positive welfare opportunities were under veterinary control. So, what is my take-home message from this? It is that veterinarians and veterinary students are favorably disposed to positive aspects of welfare for dairy cows. However, they are definitely more focused on the avoidance of negative aspects of dairy cattle welfare. And while they feel that they have the capability to be able to suggest these sorts of experiences to dairy farmers, they are uncertain of their ability to influence change to current producer practice. And on that, that is the presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brunt. Do we have any questions? Yeah.
So kind of how that created a question. I guess, was there any kind of discussion with the conference did it come up that when you talk about different positive welfare and minimizing negative welfare, I think some people would think by minimizing negative welfare, that's positive welfare. I don't know if maybe the argument that that just takes you from these, and that's not really promoting positive welfare. Is that something that came up or?
Okay, the question is about whether minimizing negative welfare gets me sort of to neutral, or whether it's considered the same as positive welfare.
Yeah, I think you summarized that. Thank you, John. That one thing that we were concerned about that might occur, that people might conflate the absence of negative as being positive. And what we did with that was we provided them in the first part of the survey where we were talking about roles, we provided them with questions that were kind of a priori that broke it down into this represents the decreasing negatives, this represents increasing positives. That they didn't know that, but that's kind of the way it was structured. But then before we got into the attitudes, the perceived professional values, and the behavioral controls, we provided them at the very start very explicit reference from the literature around that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it talks about, you know, the absence of negatives is not necessarily positive. It just means a neutral space. However, the absence of positive does not necessarily. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not explaining that one. Sorry, but we did provide a priority statement about that. To be able to get around those sorts of confusion.
Sounds like a great coffee break discussion. So we have a question online. Did you ask the respondents what they think might improve their ability to influence the producers to provide positive welfare?
Thank you. We asked them about what the barriers were. We did not specifically ask them about what they thought they could do to improve that. A lot of the barriers, I will just spend a second to talk about the barriers. So just to be clear as well, is that this was a mixed method survey. I did not present any of the qualitative data here, but when we did ask them around that, one of the largest hurdles for them was that the dairy cows are not their property. They are the property of the farmer. And while they can make suggestions, they cannot necessarily have a great level of influence from their perspective to be able to change practices on the farm. So that was one of the things that we did have there.
Thank you. Yes, we got a question. Yes.
This kind of continuing on around that observant, do you have like a sense of if they do provide those suggestions? You know, you said that the veterinarians feel they could, and talk about the barriers, but do you have any sense if they actually do provide suggestions.
Okay, so questions about whether they think that they can provide the suggestions, or do they actually do it?
Okay, yes, so there is a couple pieces to that where they oftentimes, yes, they feel that they can do it. However, in some of our responses, we found that the veterinarians talked about there's only so many things we can tackle at once. And there was a general sense that while we find that this is important, promoting positive welfare is important, without a doubt, there is a lot of negatives that need to be addressed before we can even get close to spending a lot of focused time on this. So I think that was the root of why they felt that they did not have control at influencing practice on farm, because they weren't even spending their time doing those things because there was more pressing animal welfare and suffering issues that had to be dealt with.
Okay, and I think we will have to wrap up there and move on to the next presenter, but let's thank Dr. Brunt.